Welcome to Carol's Kitchen. I am Carol with the Gibsonburg branch of the Berkshire Public Library. Is your love tank low due to COVID? This is the perfect dessert to cheer you up. We are making chocolate chip date cake, and here is a healthy version of it. And this version is more like the original recipe, which came from Pauline's Tea Room down in Troy, Ohio, where my mother-in-law worked as a server for some time. But before we get started, I need to ask you, do you know what a date is? I'm not talking about the hottie that you might be going out with for Valentine's Day, or not, but this fruit that you can get in the store, which is one of the main ingredients in our recipe tonight. A date is actually very squishy if you've ever touched one before. Not a whole lot of flavor, but it is great in fiber. Taste of Home on one of their websites said that in a handful of dates you can get 7 grams of fiber, which is just wonderful for your body. But the first step in making our chocolate chip date cake is going to be to cut up these pitted dates that you get in the store. I bought a 6-ounce bag, and that was plenty. Actually had some left over. But you're going to cut them up into little pieces. And if you're one that doesn't like to get your hands messy, definitely use a fork, because like I said, they are very, very sticky. Okay. This recipe is so moist, and that is in large part due to these dates. Okay. So I have some already cut up. So here we have 1 cup of pitted chopped dates. And I did this in the microwave ahead of time, but you'll want to get 1.5 cups of boiling water. You can warm it up in the microwave or on the stove top. And to that, you're going to add 1 teaspoon of baking soda. I'm going to add the soda first. And stir it around. And then we're going to add the dates. And this is something you want to do about an hour ahead of time, because they needs to be cool to use it in the next step of the recipe. So we're just going to let that sit for a little bit. And I have a date mixture that we'll use that has been cooling for the last hour. So we'll just set that aside. All right, and the next step is going to be to grab your stick of butter. Okay, the original recipe calls for 1/2 cup of shortening, but I love butter, so we're using butter tonight. I did soften it in the microwave. Probably a little bit softer than I would normally like, but it'll do. So you've got your 1 stick of butter, and then you want to grab 1 cup of sugar. Now, if you're going for the healthier version of this recipe, you might use a sugar-free alternative. We're currently using monk fruit sweetener, but in tonight's recipe, we're just going to use regular sugar. So we're going to add that 1 cup. And then the next ingredient is one that I learned about a long time ago. You can use 2 eggs and keep it super basic. That's what the original recipe calls for. But instead, tonight, we're going to go with ground flaxseed. I'm wondering if any of you at home have ever tried that. So basically, flaxseed is an alternative in baking to eggs. And to eat it by itself, it doesn't taste very good, but in a recipe, I don't even notice the difference. And flax is really good for omega-3s. So in a separate bowl, you can get 1 tablespoon of flax, and since I couldn't find my tablespoon, I've got a half, so I'm going to do 2 1/2 tablespoons. So 1 tablespoon, and then Combine that with 3 tablespoons of water. So I've pre-measured that. I'm just going to add that to my 1 tablespoon. And then let that mix up and dissolve for a little while, not long. We'll mix up our sugar and our butter while we're letting that dissolve. So when all this stuff hit with COVID, that was one of the first things that I bought at the store, was that big bag of flax. Because I thought, if you can't go to the store and get eggs, I've got flax. I can make pancakes or anything else like that. And in baking, you just don't notice the difference. So here we've got our sugar and our butter mixed up. Our flax is mostly dissolved. We'll add that now. And combine it. Guess if you had an egg allergy, that would be a good alternative as well. Okay, and from there, I'll show you our date mixture that has been cooling for the last hour. If you can see it without tipping it there. But we're gonna add that as the next step in our chocolate chip date cake. You just have lots of little pieces of dates. They're even more moist with all that water they've absorbed. And we're going to mix that together. And for not having much of a taste, it does smell really good. That and the butter, of course. Alrighty, now we're going to add our dry ingredients to that same bowl and grab 1.5 cups of flour. I've been told in baking it's really important to have your measurements down. So we'll use a knife to smooth that off. But there's 1 cup. And we're going to use a 1/4 cup for twice for our 1/2 cup. 1 and 2. And then the next step is to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I suppose you could do your dry ingredients in a separate bowl, but we're not going to add a dish. And the last time I made this recipe, I did this and it worked out just fine. It's a totally family approved recipe. So there's our 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and now 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda. And it's funny because I made the original recipe and then the healthier version with the flax and a sugar alternative, and overall my family liked the flax seed better, which says a lot. It's actually very good tasting as well as being healthy. So 3/4 teaspoon of soda, here we go. There's 1/2, and there's 1/4. And we're just gonna mix that all together on top before we mix it in with the rest. Try to sift it a little bit together. And then mix it all together. It's actually a pretty simple recipe. You just have to plan out your timing and getting your dates mixture cooked and cooled before you do the rest of it. And I found the dates in a section of the grocery store very close to the raisins and prunes. So they're, of course, a dried fruit. Alrighty, and you can snack on them too. And I didn't know this before I did this recipe, but I guess if you have a lot of fiber in your diet, it helps to level out your blood sugar levels, which is really good for diabetes. Or if you have a day where you just eat too much chocolate or too much sugar, eat some fiber, make something with dates in it. Okay, so there we've got our mixture all together. Alrighty, we are ready to put it in our pan. So, like most baked goods, you're gonna grease a pan. And then we'll add our mixture to our pan. And once they're baked, they do tend to turn out more like a bar. So we're gonna add one more thing to our finished chocolate chip date cake bar before the night's over. But you'll just want to smooth it out in your pan. You can see all those dates in there. Okay. So, the next step is to put a topping on there. You're going to add, if you use the original recipe, 3/4 cup of sugar. I found that to be way too much for my taste, and so I went to 1/2 cup of regular sugar. So we'll do that next. All right. And we're just gonna sprinkle that over the top. And remember, this is a sweet dessert. Great for Valentine's Day. There is 1/4 cup. I'm going to add another 1/4 cup. Once it bakes, it just really, that sugar just adds a nice look to the top. Okay, and from there, if you're going a healthier alternative, you can actually get dark chocolate, no sugar added chips. Of course, they're more expensive because they're healthier. We're not going to use that tonight. We're just going to use regular semi-sweet chocolate chips, and the recipe calls for 1 cup. And then you just sprinkle that over the top. If you want, you can add nuts. When I made it in my healthier option, I did add walnuts chopped up on the top, and it calls for 1/2 cup of chopped nuts. And once you have it, you're ready to put it in the oven. You can set it for 350 degrees, and it takes about 35 minutes to cook or to bake. But the next and the last thing we'll do tonight is I've shared on other programs how you can buy heavy whipping cream and cut low on your sugars doing that too. This one happens to have 0 sugars in it. So it is possible to find that in the store. But all you have to do is get your beaters and blend that up, and you have a whipped cream alternative. So we're going to add some whipped cream to our dessert so that you can have the full effect of chocolate chip date cake. And here you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Chocolate chip date cake. The recipe will be posted on Gibsonburg Library's Facebook page. If you have any questions, feel free to call the Gibsonburg Library at 419-637-2173. Have a good night.